everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Vanissia, this is the Woolly Worker Knitting Podcast, and today I am joining you for a special episode all about hand-dyed yarn. This is actually the third video in a series I am doing on 1 or 2 skein projects for hand-dyed. I try to be thrifty and economical. If I can buy less yarn to get garments, then I'm all for it. And I thought that I could share all of that inspiration and knowledge I've gleaned over the course of research on Ravelry and on Instagram with you guys. So yeah, let's get into it. If you're interested, then obviously you can watch then the first part of this video. I will link it here. And it was all about 1 skein project. And then you can also watch the first 8 projects that I selected, which only use 2 skeins of hand-dyed, and that was actually all garments, I believe, because I don't really want to buy usually 2 skeins of hand-dyed for an accessory. In my mind, over £40 for an accessory, I try to avoid that if I can. So I try to also, again, in this video, focus a lot on garments, but there will be 2 shawls. As always, there will be timestamps down below if you want to skip ahead to sections or come back to it later. I will also put the name of patterns, designers, yarn dyers that I mentioned, etc. You can find a Ravelry bundle with all of these projects linked below as well. I also mentioned a few tips and tricks in the previous iterations of this series if you wanted to see, for example, how I go on Ravelry and search for yardages in projects to see if maybe having 800 meters of yarn is enough, even if the pattern calls for 900 meters. So definitely check that out. And I also talk about tips on how to get hand-dyed for cheap, or also how to know what hand-dyed projects would go well, or like what hand-dyed yarns would go with which projects and not compete. I talk about all that in the past videos, so I thought it would be a bit silly to just repeat everything here. So this video will really just focus on patterns, their specs, maybe what yarn I plan to use for them. I don't have yarn for all of them, but all of these projects I am seriously considering and have looked into a lot, so I'm not just picking out like the first project on Ravelry and telling you that. Like this is seriously on my queue. If you want to find me on Ravelry, on Instagram, or on Discord, I'm at The Woolly Worker. You can find the links below, and if you like what I do, you can support me on Ko-fi or Ko-fi for just the price of a cup of coffee. I think that this video will be handy as we're heading right into yarn festival season. I will be attending all Scottish yarn festivals. I've already bought tickets for 2 of them. There's the Wool Producer Showcase in March and then the Woolly Good Gathering in April. I'll be attending Tangled Gala Shields in June, Glasgow School of Yarn I think in October or November, and then the other Perth Yarn Festival in September. I also want to briefly address the fact that obviously this will only be applicable for people who are my size or maybe a size smaller, perhaps a size larger, but maybe not above and beyond that, and that's unfortunate. Obviously, if you're a larger size and you need to buy more yarn, then maybe this video won't apply to you, and maybe you will need to get 3 skeins instead of 2. I hope that you can still get something from this video, even if that's the case, because I still picked projects that are very yardage friendly. And yeah, and then obviously then if you're my size, I really hope that you get something from this video as well. So I think that that's us ready to start. I'll hopefully be making another part of this series about 3 and 4 skeins projects. Let me know if you have any ideas for projects that you know only use 2 or 3 skeins. I'd be curious to hear if anything flew under my radar. But yeah, let's just jump into it. So the first couple things I will talk about are shawls. There are 2 shawls. Then we'll talk about short-sleeved tops and shirts, and then I will talk about long sleeve things. I think I have 9 projects rounded up all together. So yeah, the first one is Birds of a Feather by Andrea Mowry. Now this pattern was published in Lane Magazine edition 2 or issue 2. This is a triangle shawl that starts off at the tip of the triangle and then you increase evenly out in garter stitch and also lace, and then that gives you this very deep, not shallow shawl that ends up being over 2.5 meters long if you do the full size. It's one size only, and it's really striking in the pattern photos that she uses. She obviously is using hand-dyed. She's using a hand-dyed merino singles and then a hand-dyed mohair. The gauge for this is 19 stitches per 46 rows, but keep in mind this is in garter stitch and slanted, like triangular, so I guess this is why the rows are kind of weird. She does it on 4mm needles, which is quite a large needle and will definitely give you a very light and airy fabric, which I think will be super lovely really nice and whimsical, maybe not the warmest, but also if you're using a soft yarn and maybe a suri instead of a mohair, this will be really, really nice to wrap around yourself. Like I said, it's one size only, but technically, like I will mention in a bit, you can make it smaller. I guess you could make it bigger, but that will obviously use more yarn. It requires 150 grams of fingering and then 50 grams of mohair. So a lot of people on Ravelry, I've looked at the notes, have tried and successfully used only 100 grams of fingering, which is what I would definitely do. And then I would maybe buy one skein of 50 gram of hand-dyed suri. I would be careful to make sure the suri I'm picking out is 400 meters and not 300 meters, as suri usually is, because in this example the mohair was definitely 400 meters. So there's a lot of helpful notes on Ravelry. Some of them I've favorited. They tell you exactly what they've done, what row that they stopped increasing, if they made any modifications to the bind off or the edging, etc. So I've not looked deeply into it, but I know it's doable, and I'm really confident it can be done, and I think it would look so stunning. And this is something that, yeah, it would look so beautiful that I would be willing to spend 2 skeins of hand-dyed instead of just one for an accessory, although I would also consider just buying 1 skein of hand-dyed and then doing the mohair or suri with a commercial yarn. So something that I found in my stash that I thought would work well, for example, is this merino and silk from Zekami. I think I've shown this a few times on the podcast. I've still yet to use it. I don't know why I'm being so precious about it. It is one of the first skeins of hand-dyed I bought. I think it's because it's 50-50 merino silk that I'm just so precious about it. But I think it would look really good as a shawl. And then what I would do maybe is I could pair it with some suri. This is Cumulus by Fiber Spates. And I think that this would look quite nice because they would be contrasting. Although this would also look really good with a white. I just don't have a white suri right now. I have a white mohair, but I wouldn't use that. So yeah, I obviously don't have the yarn for this right now, so I don't think I'm going to be making this year. But it's always something that if I'm going to a yarn festival, I try to keep in mind, is there a really nice fingering weight yarn, maybe with speckles, maybe with just a lot of variation, maybe not a tonal, maybe something a bit more special than a tonal. And then are they selling also a skein of hand-dyed suri that goes well? If you're following hand dyers on Instagram and you know that they're releasing a collection, usually what they do is they have some variegated yarns and then some tonals, and they go really well together. It's all color coordinated. So I think that this would look really, really good if you got like a tonal suri to go with a variegated merino that was from the same collection. I think that would be great, and I'm going to definitely keep that in mind next time that I want to do a pre-order from a hand dyer. If you're making the shawl smaller to use up less yarn, then someone mentioned that their shawl was then 2 meters long instead of 2.5, which was still very ample and big enough. This is quite a big shawl anyway. And I think I saw a sample of this knit at a yarn festival from Zekami. They had one on display, and I really fell in love with how it looked and how it felt. So it confirmed that this is a project that is on my radar. Okay, the next shawl is by Amy Christophers, and you may have already seen this motif a lot. It's the pressed flowers shawl. It just says pressed flowers, but it is a shawl. There's a cowl, socks, cardigan, sweater, there's a lot. What I really like about this is that it's mosaic knitting, so technically even though there's a motif and there's color work, it doesn't involve any two-stranded color work, so you just only work with one color at a time, and because you're carrying the unused color up, there's no million ends to weave in, it's all done simultaneously. It's a DK weight pattern, and the original, again, uses more yarn than what I would use. It uses 4 skeins, 2 of the main color, 2 of the contrasting. I would pretty much only use 2 skeins of one and then use commercial yarn for the rest. I think this would be a really good way to be more economical and still get a very striking effect if you get enough contrast between the two. What I've seen a lot is that people use a light color in the background and then a dark color at the front. So the little flowers peeking out are light, and then the kind of main color that you're seeing is dark. And that one is 180 centimeters wingspan. It is also much deeper as a shawl. It feels like a regular triangle type thing. I think it would be nice, again, not necessarily to wear as a scarf, but just like wrap yourself in it, especially if you're still indoors or something. And if you're using a superwash DK, then it'll definitely be something that is next to skin soft. And also because it's superwash, maybe you don't have to worry as much about gauge, but the gauge is 20 stitches per 38 rows. Again, quite a lot of rows, but it's because it's mosaic knitting. It is one size, but it is easily customizable, the pattern says. Because of the construction of it, you can pretty much just stop whenever you want. Make sure to have enough yarn to make the border at the end. It does look different at the edging than it does in the main motif. It is fully charted, it's a repeat, so you need to be comfortable with that. And yeah, I think that what would work really, really well with hand-dyed, and I know that a lot of companies were selling kits, for example. I think what works well is a variegated light color and then a solid front. So for example, what I would use, I was looking at my stash, is this skein of hand-dyed by Zakami. It's all super subtle shades of pastels. We have some pink, blue, green, purple, yellow, and a bit of grey, all super well melded together. A tiny bit of speckles as well, but nothing too distracting, and the overall tone that you're getting from this is that it's a very light colour. So what I would do is I would then pick out a skein of DK from my stash. This is Eco Cashmere by Gepard. I probably wouldn't use this because I, first of all, only have one of these. It's also quite expensive, and the point of this is to keep costs down, but this was a good colour that I thought would go well. So I would use a skein of DK from stash that would be a commercial yarn, and then I would put that on top. And I think that this would work really well because obviously the contrast in this is amazing. If you don't know or you're not sure, there's always a trick that you can do where you put a black and white filter on your camera or iPhone or whatever. You can do that in your camera app, or you can also do it post photo in editing, and you can see how contrasting the two shades are. So obviously this would be contrasting enough. And ta-da, that's it. You have a really good pairing, you have something that would work really well and that would definitely catch the eye. There's also some really nice projects on Ravelry where they switch things up and use the light colour as the dominant colour and a dark one as a background. It looks really nice as well. I personally prefer this kind of combo where the flowers would then be in this beautiful variegated yarn. So I think this only came under my radar recently, and again, it's something that I'm really keeping under my sleeve. Is that the expression? For that next time that there's a pre-order or a yarn festival that I attend, I'll definitely consider getting 2 skeins of a light variegated for the pressed flowers. I was also actually thinking of this skein. This is from Cookston Craft. I only have one, sadly, so I couldn't do this, but I thought that the colours on this would look really good for flowers because it's so springy and fresh. So yeah, sadly I can't use that, but that's kind of the vibe I would be going for. Okay, so that's it for shawls. Let's move on to the next category, which is tops. And the first one is really, really beautiful, and I'm really excited to talk about that one. And it is the Cottage Core Crop by Kate Garden, or Gardin. The suggested yarn is some hand-dyed yarn, and we love to see it. I think it definitely confirms that, like, if the vision of the pattern designer was to use hand-dyed for a top, then you can be confident that yours would look good in that. And then obviously then the samples are usually made in hand-dyed, so you already have that visual. I also really like the fact that even though there's quite a lot happening with this top, such as ruffles, buttons, eyelets, v-neck, it's a top-down raglan, there's a lot going on, and yet she uses a heavily variegated hand-dyed yarn, and it works, and this really fills me with confidence. Usually my advice would be to keep things simple if you're using a heavily variegated yarn, such as this one. Then I would say to keep it simple, like top-down raglan like this, which I will talk about in just a minute. So for example, this would work well for a complicated pattern, like the Cottage Core Crop, and then this would work well for a simple raglan. But then with this pattern, we're actually shaking things up, and then we are using some heavily variegated yarn. So this is actually the yarn that I've selected for this crop that I want to do. This was a Taylor Swift pre-order from Pigment and Ply from last year, and this is called Romance Is Not Dead. As you can see, it is heavily variegated. There's reds mainly, which is what attracted me to it, but there's actually so much going on, which is a signature style of Pigment and Ply. If you picked like the eyedroplet tool on Photoshop and you picked how many colors there are in this, you could get at least 20. Like there's purples, browns, there's a bit of blue, green, beige, pink, it's stunning. I really like it, and I can't wait to see how this knits up in stockinette. So anyway, the cottage core crop then is, like I said, raglan. We have 9 sizes. It goes from 5 to 10 centimeters of positive ease. It suggests there's 24 stitches per 33 rows on 3.75 millimeter needles, which is quite a large needle, I would say, for fingering to still get that 24 stitch gauge. I probably wouldn't be able to meet that because I'm a very loose knitter, so I would have to go down, but whatever works for you. A lot of people have done this top with merino. There's 150 projects on Ravelry as of today. They've used the merino, but you could definitely do this with a bit of silk or alpaca in it. I think it would look good because it's definitely meant to be worn in warmer weather. So yeah, a bit of summer fibers couldn't hurt. But I think it would be nice to have a bit of the elasticity and memory of merino for the ruffle especially, and for that to work well. And yeah, I think this is definitely something that I'd like to do this year, but we'll see, because as you will see, I have like a lot of t-shirts planned, and a lot of them use 2 skeins of hand-dyed, so I'm probably gonna have to pick one and just do it this year. But I thought that I would bring this one to your attention because it's not talked about that much. I've again seen one of my favorite hand dyers, the like Fiber and Fox, share one of their samples. I'll put a photo here. Georgia looks really good in her sample, in her yarns from the Summer Court collection. I have some yarn from that collection, and I was like, wow, that project I will do at some point. The next project is the Monica Geller Tee by Sari Nordland. I've also talked about this project as something that I wanted to do last year for spring t-shirts, I think. I had some sport yarn from Isayer that I wanted to use, but it also came to my attention that sometimes hand dyers sell sport weight yarns. It's rarer in the UK, but it is possible to find it, and I know that in the US it's even easier to find sport yarn. So my size would pretty much require 600 meters, which would be 2 skeins of 300 meters sport weight yarn, which is why I wanted to keep this one in mind in case I ever came upon some 300 meter skeins. I know the Fiber and Fox have a sport base, so maybe next time that they have a pre-order I'm interested in, I could snag a couple of their sport weight yarn. This pattern is for 20 stitches per 28 rows on 3.5 millimeters. It offers 9 sizes, and the ease recommended is from 5 to 10 centimeters. It is a really interesting construction, or different than usual. It is made bottom up, and then it has set-in sleeves, and then a twisted rib detail, and a double folded neck. It's kind of like in French we would say un chandail, and obviously it was inspired by the kind of like 80s, 90s Monica Geller like tight knitted sweaters, and then like skirts and tights. Like, it just looks really cool, really stylish. Definitely something that you could find in ready to wear, and you could style up, style down. I think it would be really wearable, and could be a nice transitional piece for different weathers, depending also on the fibers that you choose to use for that. I probably would just go for a merino. I've seen like a merino nylon base basically for sport weight yarn. Sari Nordland recommends you could also use a heavy fingering, which maybe I could pair a fingering yarn with a lace weight yarn. So for example, I could use those two and then hold a strand of Alva by Filcolana or Isayer Alpaca 1 in a dark red color, probably, just not to marl it, but just kind of to thicken it, make it thicker. And then I would make that, and I would also just need 2 skeins, and that would give me 800 meters. So yeah, I think this isn't that hard to reach or unattainable. I really like the fit of this top. It looks good on everyone that I've seen make it on Ravelry. Again, it only has about 170 projects, so it's not that known a shirt, but it looks so good. I think a lot of people are daunted by bottom up. I am too. I think I'd like to give it a serious try this year, and also be able to have those kind of templates that I would then use every time I make a bottom up again. I could just use previous tops to know when to stop and split for front and back. Another thing that you could do is, if you can't reach gauge, to just make a size up or a size down, depending. So for example, if you only had fingering and not sport, maybe with your 800 meters you're still able to make a size or 2 up, and then it would become smaller because of your like larger gauge or smaller gauge, and then it would fit you. So that's also what I would recommend doing if you really wanted this top and couldn't meet gauge, is to just calculate the modifications you'd have to make. Okay, the next top on my list is the Anna Tee by Sarah Stark. This was published around 3 years ago, so it's quite an old one. It has more projects on Ravelry, about 800. I think it looks really good. I talked about the office tee in a previous video in this series that also required 2 skeins. This one is kind of like a similar type. It has also a saddle shoulder, it has twisted rib details, it uses about the same amount of yarn, and it also recommends using some kind of linen or silk base for the drape and the breathability of this kind of t-shirt. I think you, again, couldn't really go wrong with using a merino though. It would just be like a regular type of short sleeve sweater. This one is a gauge of 24 stitches, again for 32 rows on 3.75mm needles, 4 to 10 centimeters of positive ease, and it comes in 7 sizes. Some projects on Ravelry have used knitting for olive pure silk, which I thought looked also really good. If I were to make this top, and I do want to make it, I might use this, which is an alpaca silk cashmere blend. This is from the Fiber Fox. This is called Herbaceous, and it is from the Spring Court Collection pre-order. This is the same base as this that I'm wearing right now, and it is very drapey. I was working on this in the podcast a while ago, so you will have seen me talk about how soft the base is. If you're sensitive to alpaca, there might be a bit of a prickle, but I think it would be really good for like this kind of t-shirt, and then you can wear a little cardigan on top if you're getting chilly. I think that this green base would look really good. It's quite similar to this, but a little bit darker. And yeah, I think that this would look really good, feel really nice, be light and airy, and it goes well with that vibe. And again, a lot of the examples of people wearing that were in hand-dyed, so if you have some hand-dyed and you're curious to see how it would look like in that kind of top-down construction, contiguous construction, then you can see that on Ravelry. Okay, the last t-shirt on my list is the Color Tip Tee by Emily Curtis of Gently Chaotic Knits. I really like this t-shirt. I've been wanting to make it forever. I've kind of been in a conundrum because it technically doesn't use that much more than 1 skein of the main color, so I've been trying to see if I would be okay with just making it in 1 skein and having it mega cropped, but I think I would just be more comfortable including it in this list of 2 skein projects. The gauge is 24 stitches per 36 rows for 10 centimeters, and you get 10 centimeters of ease recommended at the bust, 0 ease recommended at the shoulders, and it comes in 9 sizes. This is a set-in sleeve t-shirt, same as the Monica Geller tee, however this one is top down, where you work the front and back separately, work the body, and then pick up for the sleeves. You make a short row sleeve cap for a really good fit, and then you have this nice twisted rib detail, a little pocket which is adorable. Yeah, the pattern comes with a bunch of extra, a hacking guide she calls it, where there's a v-neck modification that you can do with instructions, which I think is really generous of her to have included. There's also a modification you can do for broader shoulders adjustment, because again, if the pattern only comes with 0 ease at the shoulders, it's quite important that you get that fit right compared to your bust. And it also comes with a row gauge hack guide if you're not meeting it, because as Emily states in the pattern description and in the pattern, meeting row gauge for this project is more important than for other projects that you may have encountered because of that set-in sleeve construction and yoke depth. If you're familiar with the Dad Sweater by Emily Curtis, which is also on my list, the construction is very similar. So both of those projects are definitely on my list. I don't know which one I will do first, but I think I've really been enjoying the kind of set-in sleeve, saddle shoulders, contiguous constructions. I really like the fit of those on my body, and I'm trying to move away from raglans and circular yokes. I like drop shoulders as well, but I'm trying to get less ease as well. So if I were to make this project, I am also tempted to just make it in a single color, especially if I'm buying 2 skeins of hand-dyed, then I would probably just want to make the most out of it. So again, I think that this would look really good in this nice green, slightly variegated, it's kind of like a green tonal, which has a lot of green, dark green speckles. Although there's a little bit of cream, a tiny bit of chartreuse, lime, I don't know a lot of green colours. Pistachio, a little bit of pistachio. So I think that this would work well. This is alpaca silk fingering again, but the original from Emily Curtis uses Pearl Soho linen quill, which if you're not familiar with, is a very popular base which I really want to get my hands on. And it is Highland wool, alpaca and linen. And I've actually seen a few hand dyers have this base available, especially in the summer month, where you get this wool, alpaca, linen blend, usually in the same proportions as well. So yeah, I think that it would be really good to make this kind of t-shirt. I think what would also be fun if you, I don't know, maybe you bought too much hand-dyed, so you only have 1.5 left of these, so you make the t-shirt, and then what you could also do is use a minis to make the color details. So here Emily has like a blue, a red for the arm, and a yellow at the bottom. But you could make all the accent in the same color. But yeah, actually this is what I was talking about. This, I only have one of these, so I couldn't make it. But this is, oh, this one is actually alpaca linen silk, as opposed to wool alpaca linen. But you know what I mean, it's kind of like a really summery blend. The linen adds a little bit of texture to it. They're all going to be very breathable. This one is 400 meters per 100 grams. It's very important to look at the yardages of the bases you're interested in if you're going to pick something else than superwash merino, because sometimes the yardage is much smaller for some bases. For example, one time I bought some merino linen singles and they were 366 meters instead of 400, which is like a 10% like difference that you're losing. So I wouldn't be able to make some of these projects if I was playing Yarn Chicken. But yeah, I'm, again, still undecided whether I want to crop this t-shirt and try to just really make it with like one skein of this yarn, for example, and then make the little edgings here in like dark green, or whether I want to commit and buy 2 skeins of this alpaca linen silk base. Okay, now we're moving on to the long sleeve items. The first one is the Slightly Sassy V by Amy Sher. This is kind of like a similar shape to the Cumulus T by Petite Knit, the short sleeve version, but Amy Sher is a designer that I've been following on Instagram for a while. I have a couple of her patterns, including this one, and I've been so eager to dive into them and really appreciate them, because I've only heard amazing things, and I want to be able to say, like, for myself, from my own experience, that it is someone I can recommend. But from what I've heard, she is definitely very focused on size inclusivity, focuses on fit, is not afraid to use a lot of tables, charts, spreadsheets, and she shares those numbers with you. She has a focus as well on accessibility of her patterns and includes details on how accessible they are in terms of like the fonts that she uses. She writes that in the pattern description on Ravelry, so before you buy the pattern, you know whether it'll be something that's accessible to you. She writes instructions and she charts them, so there's that option. There's a progress keeper in the pattern when there's instructions that are given for at the same time, which I think would be excellent for beginners, when that can be something that can be a bit daunting at first. So those are all the good things that I've heard about Amy Sher, and I really want to make this pattern hopefully this year. She also uses Pearl Soho linen quill in her sample, as well as the Rarum Natura Albertine, which is a merino silk blend. So again, this merino silk blend would work well. This alpaca linen silk would work well. I don't have a plan for yarn yet, but I was looking at my stash, and again, something that I do have, it is just a merino, actually it's a merino cashmere nylon, so it is extra soft, and it's beautiful blue. Again, it is quite, it's not the most variegated, but it's not the most unified color either. There's a bit of variation going on, so this kind of v-neck stockinette raglan would be a perfect way to showcase this beautiful yarn and have the yarn be in focus. The Slightly Sassy V by Amy Sher is a compound raglan, so again, focus on fit as opposed to just like straight line. It's something that she says she's been doing a lot more in her most recent patterns, is always doing compound raglans. The gauge is 24 stitches per 32 rows on 3.5 millimeters. She recommends between 5 to 12.5 centimeters of positive ease, and she offers 9 sizes as well. The pattern comes with modifications you can make. There's a full length and a cropped version. She showcases both on her project pattern page. And it comes with short sleeve options or also 3/4 length. I really like the 3/4 length with the crop, which is also something that, according to the yardage calculations, I would be able to do with 800 meters of yarn. So I'm quite tempted to try that. At worst, I could make the sleeves a little bit shorter, and I think this would also look really good as a t-shirt. It's got an I-cord detail. It also comes with the option of bust dart short row shaping. There's, I think, 2 cup sizes, A and B, or just not doing it at all. And she recommends using around 10 to 40% of cotton, linen, or silk content. So maybe something that still uses some merino for the elasticity and the memory, but then having those summery fibers can be good for drape and breathability. Once again, I feel like I'm repeating myself from all the other t-shirts, but the fact that all these designers talk about the same things to keep in mind kind of confirms that if you're looking for summery hand-dyed yarns, these are nice projects that would go well with that. So I think I would definitely be able to eke out a version of this with the 2 skeins of yarn that I have, and I'd really like to make this spring and wear it, because I think that this kind of coverage would be good for the type of climate we have here in Scotland in our hot month. Okay, the next one I'm really excited to talk about because it is really new. It is the Cognac Sweater by Atelier Castan. I heard about this because my friend Rebecca from Hip Knit Hooray was test knitting this sweater, and then she even said in her latest video that this was kind of a good idea for a project that didn't require that much yardage. In fact, I think half of the sizes, so up to size 4 and 5, still only just need 2 skeins, which is a really good economical way, and then the sizes afterwards requires 3, but no size requires 4 skeins of hand-dyed. So first things first, the gauge for this is 16 stitches per 22 rows on 6mm needles for a DK weight altogether, so fingering and lace or 2 fingerings, or just a DK. It recommends 4 to 14 centimeters of positive ease and also comes in 9 sizes. This has been compared to the Lento because of the fact it uses a fingering and a mohair at a very loose gauge. So here 16 stitches I think is even less stitches per 10 centimeters than the Lento. And I really like that it has an I-cord example. It also has a twisted rib example. It's really nice to see the difference. But what I love the most about this pattern, obviously if you know me, is the construction. It is another contiguous shoulder, which looks like it has more of a fit. It has more of a fit at the shoulders and then a bit more ease at the bust. So what I would definitely do for that is 2 skeins of hand-dyed fingering, maybe non-superwash, and then pair that with a surrey. So something that I could do, but I'm not going to, is use those 2 skeins of zinc fiber, which is also a merino cashmere nylon blend. They're together they're 400, well together they're 800 meters. It's a really gorgeous blend. And then I was going to pair that with Fiber Spates Cumulus. This is the shade Ethereal, I think. I think that this works really well together. It pulls a bit more on the lilac tones of this. I could have picked a pink one, I think, and that would have worked just as well. And I've actually swatched with this, and this is not the gauge of the Cognac sweater, but I wanted to give you an idea of like what that looks like together, the fabric. I'm so happy with this swatch. It is like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and it's really soft. The surrey and the merino and the cashmere, like that, this is amazing. So I think what I would do is, again, next time that there's a pre-order, I would order some merino from a dyer that I really like, just 2 skeins of it, pair it with the surrey and get a beautiful sweater. Again, because it is so simple, you could get away with having a heavily variegated yarn, or you could go with a tonal or a semi-tonal. The world is your oyster when it comes to stockinette, and a few of the test knitters have used hand-dyed, which again gives a really good idea of what this would look like and confirms that it wouldn't be that far-fetched of you to use hand-dyed for this kind of project. And then lastly, the last project on my list is the Cozy Classic Light by Jessie Maid, which I am actually wearing today. So I made this last summer. I think it took me, 2 or 3 months to do. It took quite a while because I was doing helical knitting the entire way throughout and had to do quite a bit of yarn management because I only had 2 skeins. And I wanted to tell you with certainty whether it could be done or not with 2 skeins. So this is 24 stitches per 30 rows on 3.75mm needles. So again, I don't know how she achieves that gauge. I certainly couldn't, but yeah, I had to use 3.25 I think for this. This has a recommended ease of 5 to 10 centimeters, and it also comes in 9 sizes. It also comes in different versions where you've got a cropped, a full length, short sleeves, or full size, full length sleeves. It is a top down raglan. It also is a compound raglan. It starts off with a tubular cast on. There's short row shaping for the back neck, as well as lifted increases for the raglan. So it's different than the make one left, make one right that a lot of other ones use. I've seen a lot of people make modifications to this. They've used twisted rib, they've made stripes, they've done color blocking. There's a lot of things that you can do. Personally, what ended up happening was that my sleeves are, I guess, maybe, would we call that 3/4 or bracelet length? I think they're 3/4, which was not the goal originally, but I'm not too mad about it. I think as long as I know that that's what I have and I don't wear long sleeve tops underneath because then it shows, that's fine. I'm just wearing a camisole here under. And yeah, this was a journey because I was aware that I was not going to have as much yarn as I wanted to, so I did all the body increases, put the sleeves on hold, did a bit of the body. Then I decided to try and do the sleeves first before doing the rest of the body, and the sleeves kind of shrunk in the blocking process. When I had done them, I thought that I was reaching the point I was happy with, but I lost a bunch of centimeters, which it happens. And yeah, the body that I did is a tiny bit cropped. It's definitely not the crop that Jessie Maid has in her like examples. Mine hits me at just the oh, what's it called? I always remember hip and waist. It's just under my waist and above my hip, which I'm happy with. I also really like the sizing of this. I'm happy my raglan isn't too deep, and there's not that much extra fabric because of the compound raglan. Like, there's kind of folds in the fabric every now and then, but it doesn't feel like there's way too much fabric where there shouldn't be. So I do really like the fit of this. I did a couple modifications in terms of my neck to get mine to be less of a boat neck. So I talk about that in podcast episodes, but basically I cast on directly here and afterwards picked up to do the ribbing. And I also cast on less stitches than my size indicated to make sure that it cinched in a little bit more as opposed to starting off too loose. But anyway, all that to say, I can recommend the pattern. It can be done with 800 meters, you just have to be careful. And I did helical knitting, which worked really well and was easy to do because of the raglan construction. And I think that alternating the skeins was worth the effort. I'm really, really happy with this. The way that this yarn has worked in this jumper, it's one of my big successes of using hand-dyed. I also did a few body decreases to, again, make sure that I would save up on some yarn. I did some tubular bind-offs, or sewn bind-offs, rather. The only criticism I have with this is that I made mine in the alpaca silk cashmere yarn, and I think it's a bit too drapey, too loose, too floppy, and a little prickly from the alpaca as opposed to merino. So I'm happy I have it, it's fine, but I think if I were to redo that, which I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, I would use a different yarn base, so I could just do a merino. I think I would just like to do a non-superwash merino fingering in a yarn that I really, really liked. I would commit to that. Like, I know it was a long time to make this jumper, but I really do think it was worth the effort. And yeah, I would just do it with merino to get less drape, probably a different fitting sweater. It would probably behave a bit differently on my body, and maybe a darker version, because this one is so light. It would maybe be nice to have a similar fitted jumper but in dark. But yeah, I really, really like this pattern and I highly recommend it. So that's it for today's video. I had to stop halfway through, so I don't know how long this actually is, but I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you maybe got some inspiration. That's always the goal. I spend so much time on Ravelry project planning and favoriting things and making bundles, and I really think that all that time should not go to waste. And if one person out there can find a project that they liked that gives them an idea for 2 skeins of hand-dyed, then I'll have done my job. Which project of these would you like me to make this year? Maybe tell me if there's one of them that you absolutely want to see me do, because like I said, I'm really serious about all of them. I think the ones that I'm the most excited about are the shawls, because I don't have that many and I've recently been kind of craving having that available to me to just like snuggle up into. And just again, because I've been buying a lot of hand-dyed for garments in the last year, I think I'm happy to lean back into buying hand-dyed for accessories, or for like just like 1 skein or 2 skeins for socks or accessories, as opposed to always sweater quantities. It'll be more economical for sure. But yeah, tell me what your experiences are with hand-dyed. Have you made garments with it? Do you like the way that it behaves? Does it pull for you? Do you have tips to avoid pulling? Do you do color management? Let's talk about hand-dyed, because it is such a a deep topic. There's a whole industry all about it, and I feel like you're either a hand-dyed fan or you're not. And if you've watched this video, then you obviously are, I guess, or you're definitely not closed off to the idea of making garments in hand-dyed. But yeah, let me know if you like this video, and if you want to see another part in the future about 3 or 4 skein projects. I was thinking of mixing that one together. And definitely check out the previous videos of this series if you want to hear more tips about how to select projects that will work well with hand-dyed, get inspiration from hand dyers, get good deals, and also how to use Ravelry to your advantage. I really hope that you enjoy this kind of content, and if not, I'll see you all next time in a podcast episode. Bye! Take care! Happy knitting!